The quiet suburban neighborhood of Pine Valley had always been considered safe, the kind of place where children played freely in their front yards and neighbors kept their doors unlocked. But on a crisp autumn morning in September, everything changed for the Sharma family, particularly for their 16-year-old daughter, Aditi. Aditi was like any other teenage girl her age. She excelled in mathematics, dreamed of becoming an architect, and spent her weekends helping at her parents' small convenience store. With her warm smile and helpful nature, she was well liked by everyone in the community. Her mother often said that Aditi's kindness was both her greatest strength and, sometimes, her greatest weakness. That fateful Monday morning started like any other. Aditi woke up early, packed her blue backpack with her textbooks, and grabbed the lunch her mother had prepared. The morning air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched beneath her feet as she walked to her bus stop, just 3 blocks from her home. She had made this journey countless times before, always feeling safe in her familiar surroundings. But today was different. As she approached the bus stop, she noticed an unfamiliar white van parked nearby. At first, she didn't think much of it. Pine Valley was growing, and new faces weren't uncommon. However, something about the way the van was positioned, partially hidden behind a large oak tree, made her uncomfortable. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "Always trust your instincts." Aditi pulled out her phone and texted her best friend, Priya, who usually met her at the stop. "Hey, are you almost here?" she typed, trying to calm her growing unease. The response came quickly, "Sorry. Mom's driving me today. Not feeling well." Aditi's heart sank. She was alone. The street was unusually quiet that morning. No other students had arrived yet, which was strange considering the bus would be there in less than 10 minutes. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and distant traffic from the main road. Aditi clutched her phone tighter, her thumb hovering over her father's number. Suddenly, the van's engine rumbled to life. Through the reflection in a nearby car's window, Aditi noticed 2 men inside, their faces obscured by dark baseball caps. Her heart began racing as the van slowly pulled away from its spot and began moving in her direction. Years of safety drills and parental warnings kicked in, and without hesitation, she turned and began walking briskly toward the nearby coffee shop where Mrs. Patel, an old family friend, worked the morning shift. The van accelerated, and Aditi heard the distinct sound of a door sliding open. In that moment, pure instinct took over. She broke into a run, her backpack bouncing against her spine, her lungs burning as she sprinted toward the coffee shop. She could hear footsteps behind her, heavy and fast. "Hey! Stop!" a gruff voice called out, but Aditi ran faster, her mind focused solely on reaching the coffee shop's door. She thanked her lucky stars for all those track team practices she'd never skipped. The distance to the coffee shop seemed endless, though it was only half a block away. As she ran, Aditi managed to press her phone's emergency button, something her mother had insisted she practice regularly. She could hear the footsteps getting closer, and her heart felt like it would burst from her chest. The coffee shop sign was now visible, its warm lights a beacon of hope. Just as she felt a hand graze her backpack, Aditi let out a piercing scream that echoed through the quiet morning air. Lights began turning on in nearby houses, and Mrs. Patel, who had been setting up the outdoor seating, looked up. The coffee shop's door chimed as several early morning customers stepped out to investigate the commotion. The sudden attention caused her pursuers to retreat. Aditi heard the rapid footsteps moving away from her, followed by the screech of tires as the white van sped off. She collapsed into Mrs. Patel's arms, shaking uncontrollably, as concerned neighbors began emerging from their homes. Within minutes, police sirens filled the air. Aditi's parents, who had received the emergency alert from her phone, arrived moments later, their faces pale with worry. Her mother wrapped her in a tight embrace while her father spoke urgently with the police officers who had responded to the scene. As Aditi recounted her experience to the police, she realized how close she had come to becoming another statistic. Her quick thinking and the safety measures her parents had drilled into her had potentially saved her life. The officer taking her statement, Officer Singh, praised her presence of mind while assuring her parents that they would do everything possible to track down the suspects. The incident sent shockwaves through Pine Valley. Parents who had long considered their neighborhood immune to such dangers were forced to confront a frightening reality. The local news picked up the story, and soon, Aditi's experience became a wake-up call for the entire community. In the days that followed, Aditi's parents channeled their fear and anger into action. They organized community meetings, worked with local law enforcement to establish better security measures, and pushed for increased police patrols during school hours. Their determination to prevent similar incidents from happening to other children resonated with the community. The incident also sparked important conversations about safety in the digital age. While Aditi's phone had played a crucial role in alerting authorities, many parents realized their children weren't as prepared for emergency situations. The local school board quickly implemented new safety protocols, and self-defense workshops were organized for students. As the investigation continued, security footage from nearby businesses revealed that the same white van had been spotted in neighboring communities over the past few weeks. The police suspected it was part of a larger operation targeting young people in suburban areas, making Aditi's escape even more significant. The story of her quick thinking and bravery spread beyond Pine Valley, featured in regional news outlets as an example of how proper safety education and awareness could save lives. While Aditi struggled with anxiety in the aftermath of the incident, she chose to channel her experience into helping others, speaking at school assemblies about the importance of staying alert and trusting one's instincts. Her parents' demand for justice wasn't just about finding the men who had tried to harm their daughter, it was about creating lasting change in their community. They worked tirelessly with local officials to implement better lighting around bus stops, establish a neighborhood watch program, and create a community alert system for suspicious activities. As part 1 of this story concludes, the hunt for the white van continues, and the Sharma family's fight for justice is just beginning. Their experience has transformed not just their lives but their entire community, highlighting how one incident can spark a movement for change and better protection of our children. The following week brought unprecedented changes to Pine Valley. The once peaceful suburb was now filled with police patrol cars, neighborhood watch volunteers in bright yellow vests, and parents who took turns monitoring bus stops. For the Sharma family, each day brought new challenges and unexpected revelations. Officer Singh's investigation had uncovered disturbing patterns. The white van hadn't just appeared randomly, it had been methodically scouting the area for weeks. Security footage from local businesses revealed the same vehicle passing through school zones and residential areas, always during times when students would be walking to or from school. Aditi's father, Mr. Sharma, couldn't sleep at night. He spent hours reviewing footage from his convenience store's security cameras, looking for any sign of the van. His wife worried about his growing obsession, but understood it. Their daughter's close call had shaken them to their core. Every morning, Mr. Sharma now drove Aditi to school himself, despite her gentle protests that she couldn't live in fear forever. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patel's teenage son, who worked part-time at a gas station 3 towns over, recognized the van from a security alert. He immediately contacted Officer Singh. The van had been spotted refueling late at night, and this time, the security cameras had captured a clear image of the license plate. The news energized the investigation. Officer Singh and her team discovered that the plate was registered to a rental company in the next state. However, the rental documents had been filed using stolen identification. The trail seemed to grow colder until a local mechanic came forward with crucial information. They brought that van in for repairs about a month ago, the mechanic recalled during his interview with the police. Said they needed the brakes checked. Something felt off about them. They paid in cash and were really jumpy about the paperwork. He had noted down the phone number they provided, though it was probably disposable. While the adults focused on the investigation, Aditi faced her own battles at school. Some students treated her differently now, either avoiding her or treating her like a fragile object that might break. Others, particularly younger students, looked up to her with a mix of awe and fear. The attention made her uncomfortable, but her best friend Priya stood by her side, helping her navigate the sudden spotlight. The incident had sparked something in Aditi. With support from her school counselor, she started a safety awareness group. Students shared their experiences of feeling unsafe and learned practical safety measures. The group quickly grew, attracting not just students but also parents and teachers who wanted to be part of the solution. One afternoon, during a group meeting, a freshman girl approached Aditi with trembling hands. She shared how she had noticed the same white van in her neighborhood the week before the incident. She had been too scared to tell anyone, fearing no one would believe her. Her testimony added another piece to the investigation's puzzle. The police investigation expanded. Similar incidents had been reported in neighboring states, though none had ended like Aditi's case. Most victims had been too frightened to fight back or call for help. Officer Singh believed they were dealing with an organized group that targeted specific communities, particularly those known for their safety and low crime rates. Mr. Sharma channeled his anxiety into action. He organized a community safety summit, bringing together local business owners, school administrators, and law enforcement. The meeting room at the community center was packed, with people standing along the walls. Parents shared their fears, but also their determination to protect their children. The summit resulted in concrete actions. Local businesses agreed to share their security footage with police more readily. The school board approved funding for additional security cameras at bus stops. A new alert system was implemented, allowing residents to instantly share suspicious activities with law enforcement and neighbors. Aditi's mother, meanwhile, focused on healing her family's emotional wounds. She noticed how Aditi still flinched at the sound of vehicles slowing down near her, how she obsessively checked her phone's emergency features. How she struggled to sleep on quiet nights. With gentle persistence, she convinced Aditi to attend counseling sessions, where she could process her trauma in a safe space. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Officer Singh received a call from a detective in a neighboring state. They had arrested 2 men attempting a similar operation in a small town. During questioning, the suspects revealed they were part of a larger network. While they weren't the same men who had targeted Aditi, they operated under the same organization. This information reinvigorated the search. The police now had names, methods, and possible locations to investigate. The net was closing in, but the process was frustratingly slow. Each day, Mr. Sharma would visit the police station, hoping for updates, while Mrs. Sharma balanced running their store with attending community safety meetings. The incident had transformed Pine Valley. Neighbors who had barely spoken before now exchanged phone numbers and kept watch over each other's children. The local newspaper ran weekly safety columns, featuring tips from law enforcement and success stories from community watch programs. What had started as a terrifying incident was forging stronger bonds throughout the community. As Part 2 draws to a close, the investigation continues to unfold. The Sharma family, while still dealing with the emotional aftermath, has found strength in their community's response. Aditi, despite her ongoing anxiety, has discovered a new purpose in helping others stay safe. The white van's occupants remain at large, but with each passing day, the network of people working to bring them to justice grows stronger, and the net draws tighter around those responsible. 1 month after the incident, Pine Valley was hit by an unexpected autumn storm. As rain pounded against the windows of the police station, Officer Singh sat at her desk, reviewing surveillance footage for what felt like the 100th time. Something about the white van's movements had been bothering her, and finally, she noticed it, a pattern so obvious it had been invisible. The van hadn't just been targeting school routes, it had been following delivery patterns. Every appearance coincided with local grocery delivery schedules, using their routes as cover to avoid suspicion. This revelation sent Officer Singh diving back into old reports, looking for similar patterns in neighboring districts. Meanwhile, at Pine Valley High School, Aditi's safety awareness group had grown into something bigger than anyone expected. Students from 3 neighboring schools had joined, creating a network of vigilant young people who shared information about suspicious activities. Their parents, impressed by their children's initiative, helped coordinate with local law enforcement. That rainy afternoon, during one of the group's meetings, a student from the neighboring district shared something that made Aditi's heart skip a beat. "My uncle runs a warehouse near the industrial park," the student explained. "He mentioned seeing a white van getting repainted dark blue last week. The guys were really weird about it, paid extra to have it done after hours." Aditi immediately texted her father, who contacted Officer Singh. Within hours, the police had security footage from the warehouse district. The grainy video showed exactly what the student had described, the white van entering the warehouse area at night and emerging the next morning, now dark blue. The discovery energized the investigation. Officer Singh assembled a task force, including officers from neighboring districts. They began monitoring warehouse districts and industrial areas, looking for the newly painted van. Mr. Sharma and other community members helped by sharing delivery schedules and unusual business activities they'd noticed. The breakthrough came from Mrs. Patel's coffee shop. She had started keeping detailed records of unusual customers, particularly those who came during odd hours. One night, while closing up, she noticed a dark blue van parked in the far corner of her lot. The driver was watching the last few customers leave. When he noticed Mrs. Patel looking his way, he quickly drove off. But Mrs. Patel had installed new security cameras after Aditi's incident. The footage showed the van's new license plate clearly. Within hours, Officer Singh had traced it to a small auto shop in the next county. The shop owner, after some questioning, admitted to selling the van to 2 men who matched the description of Aditi's attackers. The investigation shifted into high gear. The auto shop's paperwork provided a crucial lead, a phone number that, while disposable, had been used multiple times in the area. Cell tower data began painting a picture of the suspects' movements. They weren't just targeting Pine Valley, they were part of a larger operation moving between several states. At home, Aditi noticed her parents starting to relax slightly. Her father had begun letting her walk short distances alone again, though always with her phone's tracking enabled and in constant contact with friends. Her mother had stopped checking her room multiple times during the night. Small steps toward normalcy, though everyone knew things would never be quite the same. The case took an unexpected turn when a delivery driver contacted the police. He had noticed the dark blue van following his route multiple times and had taken photos with his phone. The images were clear enough to show that the van had been modified, subtle changes to make it look like a legitimate delivery vehicle. Officer Singh coordinated with federal authorities, who had been tracking similar cases across state lines. The pattern matched a known trafficking network that had been operating along the East Coast, using converted vans and following delivery routes to avoid detection. Pine Valley's case might be the key to breaking open the entire operation. Aditi's safety awareness group had evolved into a model program that other schools were starting to adopt. They created a safety app that allowed students to log suspicious activities and alert both law enforcement and other students in real time. The app, designed with input from Officer Singh and cybersecurity experts, was already helping identify potential threats in other communities. One evening, as Mr. Sharma was closing his convenience store, he noticed something odd in his security footage. The dark blue van had passed by his store 3 times that day, each time during peak delivery hours. He immediately called Officer Singh, who mobilized plainclothes officers to monitor the area. The surveillance paid off. The van returned the next day, following the same pattern. This time, however, the police were ready. As the van made its third pass, patrol cars quietly moved into position. When the van stopped at a nearby intersection, officers swooped in from all directions. The arrest was swift and professional. The two men in the van, the same ones who had targeted Aditi, were taken into custody without incident. Inside the van, police found evidence linking them to similar attempts in other states. Maps marked with school routes, modified delivery schedules, and sophisticated communication equipment painted a picture of a well-organized criminal operation. The community's relief was palpable, but Officer Singh knew this was just the beginning. The arrested men were part of a larger network, and their capture could lead to more significant breakthroughs. Federal agents arrived in Pine Valley to coordinate with local law enforcement, praising the community's role in cracking the case. For Aditi and her family, the arrests brought mixed emotions. There was relief, certainly, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Their experience had helped expose a larger criminal operation and potentially saved other families from similar trauma. Mr. Sharma spoke at a community meeting, emphasizing that their work wasn't over, they needed to remain vigilant and continue strengthening their community bonds. As Part 3 concludes, Pine Valley finds itself at the center of a major investigation. The arrest of Aditi's attackers has opened the door to dismantling a larger criminal network. The community's response to one frightening incident has evolved into a model for other towns facing similar challenges. While questions remain about the full scope of the operation, one thing is clear: the strength of a united community can overcome even the most organized criminal enterprises. The arrival of federal agents transformed the quiet Pine Valley Police Station into a hub of activity. Agent Kapoor, the lead investigator, sat across from Aditi and her parents in Officer Singh's office, carefully reviewing their statement for what seemed like the 100th time. Each detail, no matter how small, could be the key to understanding the larger criminal network. Your daughter's quick thinking didn't just save her life, Agent Kapoor explained, her voice carrying years of experience. It helped us connect dozens of similar cases across 5 states. She spread out a map on the desk, showing locations marked with red pins, each representing a reported incident or suspicious activity. The pattern was clear now. The criminal network had been operating like a shadow delivery service, using carefully planned routes to scout potential targets. They had specifically chosen quiet, affluent suburbs where residents felt safe enough to let their guard down. Pine Valley had been just one stop on their extensive route. Mr. Sharma leaned forward, studying the map intently. Some of these locations, he noted, they're near our relatives' homes. The realization that this network had been operating so close to their extended family sent a chill through the room. Mrs. Sharma squeezed her husband's hand, both parents thinking the same thing: it could have happened to anyone's child. The interrogation of the two men caught in Pine Valley was yielding results. Their electronic devices contained encrypted communications with other members of the network. FBI cyber analysts were working around the clock to decrypt the messages, each breakthrough revealing new connections. Meanwhile, Aditi's safety awareness program had caught the attention of national media. News vans began appearing in Pine Valley, hoping to interview the teenage girl whose escape had helped expose a criminal network. Aditi was hesitant about the attention, but her parents and Officer Singh helped her see how sharing her story could help others. One morning, as Aditi prepared for a carefully controlled interview with a respected news channel, she received an unexpected message. Another teenager, from a town 3 states away, had seen the preliminary news coverage and recognized the description of the van. She had escaped a similar attempt 6 months earlier but had been too afraid to report it. Now, she was ready to come forward. This new testimony added another piece to the puzzle. The girl's description matched not only the van but also the tactics used in Pine Valley. Agent Kapoor arranged for her family to travel to Pine Valley to give a formal statement. When the two families met, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Two girls who had never met, connected by a shared trauma and a determination to prevent it from happening to others. The investigation expanded rapidly. The FBI set up a dedicated task force, with Officer Singh serving as the local liaison. The evidence gathered in Pine Valley helped authorities identify several properties used by the network for their operations. Surveillance teams were deployed, monitoring these locations while building cases strong enough for prosecution. Back at Pine Valley High School, Aditi's safety awareness group had evolved into something even more impactful. With support from federal agents, they developed a comprehensive safety curriculum that was being adopted by schools across the state. Students learned not just about personal safety but also how to recognize and report suspicious patterns in their communities. Mr. Sharma's convenience store became an unofficial community watch station. He installed a state-of-the-art security system, sharing feeds with local law enforcement. Other business owners followed suit, creating a network of surveillance that made it increasingly difficult for criminals to operate undetected in the area. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. A small-town mechanic in a neighboring state recognized one of the suspects from a news report. He had serviced several of their vehicles and remembered overhearing conversations that seemed suspicious at the time. His testimony helped authorities identify key members of the network's leadership. As federal agents closed in on various locations, Aditi and her family received regular updates from Agent Kapoor. Each arrest, each piece of evidence recovered, helped bring closure not just to their family but to countless others affected by the network's activities. The investigation revealed that the network had been operating for over 3 years, constantly moving and adapting their tactics to avoid detection. They had taken advantage of the increasing popularity of home delivery services, using the high volume of legitimate delivery vehicles as cover for their activities. One evening, as the Sharma family sat down for dinner, they received a call from Officer Singh. Federal agents had just conducted coordinated raids across 3 states, arresting 12 more suspects connected to the network. Among those arrested were the organizers who had coordinated the attempted abduction in Pine Valley. The news brought a mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also a profound sense of responsibility. Their experience had helped bring down a criminal enterprise that had threatened countless families. Mrs. Sharma hugged Aditi tightly, proud of how her daughter had turned a traumatic experience into a force for positive change. In the days that followed, more families came forward with their stories. Each testimony strengthened the case against the network and helped authorities understand the full scope of their operations. Agent Kapoor worked tirelessly to connect the dots, building a comprehensive picture of how the network had operated. The case was attracting attention from law enforcement agencies nationwide. Pine Valley's response, the combination of community vigilance, youth involvement, and cooperation with law enforcement, was being studied as a model for other communities facing similar challenges. As Part 4 concludes, the investigation has grown far beyond a single incident in a quiet suburb. What started with one girl's quick thinking has evolved into a massive operation to dismantle a sophisticated criminal network. The Sharma family, while still processing their own experience, find strength in knowing their ordeal has helped protect countless other families. As federal agents continue their work, Pine Valley stands as a testament to the power of community action and the importance of never staying silent in the face of danger. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as Aditi and her parents passed through security. 3 months had passed since the arrests, and today marked the beginning of pre-trial hearings. The marble halls echoed with footsteps as other families arrived, parents and children from different states, all connected by the same criminal network that had threatened Pine Valley. Agent Kapoor met them in a private conference room, where federal prosecutors were preparing for the day ahead. The evidence against the network was substantial: encrypted communications, financial records, surveillance footage, and testimony from dozens of witnesses. But the prosecutors knew that the human element, the stories of survivors like Aditi, would be crucial in helping the jury understand the true impact of these crimes. "You don't have to testify if you're not ready," Mrs. Sharma whispered to her daughter, noticing how Aditi's hands trembled slightly as she reviewed her statement. But Aditi shook her head, her voice steady as she replied, "If my story can help stop this from happening to someone else, I need to tell it." The prosecution had assembled a strong case. The network's operations had been more extensive than initially thought, with connections to similar groups in other regions. Financial investigators had uncovered complex money laundering schemes used to fund their operations. The modified vans, like the one used in Pine Valley, were just the tip of the iceberg. Back in Pine Valley, Officer Singh coordinated with local news outlets to keep the community informed about the proceedings. The case had brought national attention to the issue of suburban safety, and other communities were implementing programs similar to those developed in Pine Valley. Mr. Sharma's convenience store had become a hub for community safety meetings, where residents shared updates and discussed ongoing security measures. The pre-trial hearings revealed disturbing details about how the network had chosen their targets. They had studied delivery patterns, school schedules, and community routines in each location. Pine Valley had been selected specifically because of its reputation for safety. The criminals had counted on residents feeling too secure to be vigilant. As Aditi prepared for her testimony, her safety awareness group continued to grow. Students from her program were now helping train others in neighboring districts. The app they had developed was being enhanced with input from cybersecurity experts, making it more effective at identifying and reporting suspicious patterns. One morning, during a break in the proceedings, Aditi met another survivor in the courthouse cafeteria. The girl, just a year younger than her, had escaped a similar attempt in another state. They shared their stories over lunch, finding strength in their shared experience. By the end of their conversation, the girl had decided to testify as well, adding her voice to the growing chorus demanding justice. The prosecution's case was built methodically, layer by layer. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, revealed more about how the network had operated. The defendant's lawyers tried to dismiss the incidents as isolated events, but the pattern was undeniable. The coordination between different jurisdictions, the similar tactics used in each location, all pointed to a carefully planned criminal enterprise. Mrs. Patel's testimony about the van's appearance at her coffee shop proved crucial. Her detailed records and security footage helped establish a timeline of the network's activities in Pine Valley. Other business owners from different communities came forward with similar observations, creating a comprehensive picture of the network's movements. The federal prosecutors worked closely with local law enforcement from each affected community. Officer Singh's meticulous documentation of the Pine Valley investigation served as a model for organizing evidence from other jurisdictions. The cooperation between different agencies was unprecedented, setting new standards for handling complex, multi-state cases. As the legal proceedings continued, Pine Valley itself was transforming. The community's response to the crisis had created stronger bonds between neighbors. The Neighborhood Watch program had evolved into a sophisticated network of vigilant citizens working in close coordination with law enforcement. New families moving into the area were immediately integrated into these safety networks. Aditi's father noticed a change in his daughter as the case progressed. The fear that had initially paralyzed her was being replaced by determination. She spoke at community meetings with growing confidence, sharing her experience not as a victim but as a survivor who had helped expose a dangerous criminal operation. The prosecution team prepared for months, knowing that the trial would be complex. The network's leaders had resources and experienced defense attorneys. But they hadn't counted on the strength of community testimony, dozens of witnesses from different states, all sharing similar stories, all connected by the same criminal enterprise. One afternoon, as Aditi reviewed her testimony with the prosecutors, she received news that another group of suspects had been arrested in a neighboring state. The evidence gathered in the Pine Valley case had helped authorities identify and track down more members of the network. Each arrest brought new information, strengthening the case further. The impact of the case extended beyond the criminal justice system. Schools across the country were reviewing their safety protocols. Community organizations were developing new programs to protect vulnerable residents. The model that had emerged from Pine Valley, combining youth involvement, community vigilance, and cooperation with law enforcement, was being studied and adapted nationwide. As Part 5 draws to a close, the legal machinery moves forward inexorably. The pre-trial hearings have laid the groundwork for what promises to be a landmark case in suburban safety. For Aditi and her family, each day in court brings them closer to closure, while reinforcing their commitment to helping other communities protect their children. The case has become more than a pursuit of justice, it's evolved into a movement for change, with Pine Valley leading the way. The morning of the trial arrived with a quiet intensity. The federal courthouse steps were crowded with journalists and cameras, but inside, in a small preparation room, Aditi sat with her parents, drawing slow, steady breaths. The past few months had prepared her for this moment, but nothing could fully calm the butterflies in her stomach. Agent Kapoor appeared at the door, her usual composed self. The jury's being seated, she informed them softly. "Remember, Aditi, just tell your story exactly as it happened. Your truth is powerful enough." The agent had become like family over the months of preparation, her steady presence a source of strength for the Sharma family. The courtroom was imposing, with its high ceilings and dark wood panels. As Aditi took her seat in the witness box, she caught sight of other survivors and their families in the gallery. Some she had met during the pre-trial hearings, others she knew only through their shared experience. Their presence gave her courage. The lead prosecutor, Ms. Desai, approached with purpose. Her opening statement had painted a clear picture of the network's operations, using evidence gathered from Pine Valley and other communities. Now, she would help Aditi share her story, a crucial piece in demonstrating the real impact of the criminal's actions. "Could you tell us about that morning in September?" Ms. Desai asked gently. Aditi's voice started soft but grew stronger as she recounted the events. She described the white van, the gut feeling that something was wrong, the terror of the chase, and the community's response that helped save her. The defense attorneys tried to minimize the incident, suggesting it might have been a misunderstanding. But Aditi remained composed, her testimony clear and unwavering. The details she provided matched perfectly with evidence gathered from other cases, the van's positioning, the tactics used, the timing of the attempt. During a break in proceedings, Mr. Sharma sat in the courthouse hallway, remembering how this had all started with a regular Monday morning. His convenience store was now being run by trusted employees, as he and his wife dedicated themselves to attending every day of the trial. Their presence wasn't just about supporting Aditi, it was about showing the defendants that their actions had consequences. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically. Financial experts testified about the network's money trail, showing how they had funded their operations through various shell companies. Technology specialists explained how the criminals had used modified delivery tracking systems to coordinate their activities across state lines. Officer Singh's testimony provided crucial context about how the Pine Valley incident had helped expose the larger operation. Her methodical investigation, combined with the community's response, had created a template that other law enforcement agencies were now following. One of the most powerful moments came when Mrs. Patel took the stand. Her detailed observations and quick thinking had provided key evidence in the case. As she testified, she made eye contact with Aditi, who smiled gratefully at the woman who had helped save her that morning. The defense team tried to portray their clients as small-time operators, unconnected to any larger network. But the evidence told a different story. Bank records, phone logs, and surveillance footage created a clear picture of a sophisticated criminal enterprise. The modified vans found in different states all followed the same pattern, using similar equipment and tactics. During cross-examination, the defenders attempted to shake Aditi's testimony, suggesting she might have overreacted to innocent delivery workers. But years of safety training with her parents had taught her to trust her instincts. She calmly explained the specific details that had alarmed her, the van's position, the men's behavior, the timing of their appearance. The trial attracted national attention, with media coverage focusing on how one community's response to danger had led to the exposure of a major criminal network. Pine Valley's example was inspiring other suburbs to re-evaluate their own safety measures. School districts across the country were implementing programs similar to Aditi's safety awareness group. As other survivors testified, a pattern emerged. Each story shared common elements, carefully chosen locations, similar tactics, the same type of modified vehicles. The network had counted on their victims staying quiet out of fear or shame. They hadn't expected communities to unite and fight back. Expert witnesses explained how the network had exploited the rise in delivery services to hide their activities. They had studied routine delivery patterns in each target area, using this knowledge to avoid suspicion. But this methodical approach had ultimately helped investigators track their movements and identify their methods. The prosecution presented evidence from the coordinated raids that had followed the Pine Valley arrests. Each location had yielded more proof of the network's operations: modified vehicles, surveillance equipment, encrypted communications devices. The pieces fit together like a dark puzzle, revealing the full scope of their activities. Mrs. Sharma watched the proceedings with mixed emotions. Her daughter's brave testimony had helped expose these criminals, but the trial was forcing them to relive difficult memories. Yet she could see how Aditi had grown stronger through the process, turning her traumatic experience into a force for positive change. The community's support remained unwavering throughout the trial. Pine Valley residents attended the proceedings in shifts, ensuring the gallery was always filled with familiar faces. Local businesses coordinated to provide meals for the families attending the trial, and the school arranged for students to keep up with their studies during the lengthy legal proceedings. As Part 6 concludes, the prosecution's case stands strong. The combination of survivor testimony, forensic evidence, and financial records has painted a comprehensive picture of the network's operations. For Aditi and the other survivors, each day in court brings them closer to closure. The trial has become more than a legal proceeding. It's a testament to the power of community action and the importance of speaking out against crime. As the defense prepares to present their case, Pine Valley's example continues to inspire other communities to take a stand against those who would threaten their safety. As the prosecution rested its case, a tense atmosphere settled over the federal courthouse. The defense team prepared to present their arguments, and the Sharma family braced themselves for what would come next. Outside, the autumn leaves were turning, marking 6 months since that fateful morning in Pine Valley. The defense strategy became clear from their opening statements. They attempted to portray the defendants as legitimate delivery service operators who had been mistakenly caught up in a larger investigation. Their lead attorney, Mr. Reynolds, argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that the community's fear had led to hasty conclusions. Agent Kapoor sat with the prosecution team, her expression neutral as she watched the defense present their case. She had seen similar tactics before, attempts to minimize clear evidence of criminal activity by suggesting alternative explanations. But the mountain of evidence gathered from Pine Valley and other communities told a different story. The defense called their own experts, attempting to explain away the modifications to the vans as standard delivery vehicle upgrades. However, under cross-examination by Ms. Desai, these experts struggled to justify the sophisticated surveillance equipment and unauthorized tracking systems found in the vehicles. Mr. Sharma found himself clenching his fists as the defense tried to dismiss the trauma his daughter and other families had experienced. During breaks in the proceedings, he would walk the courthouse corridors with other parents, sharing their frustrations and supporting each other through the difficult testimony. One of the defense's key arguments centered on the lack of successful abductions in any of the cases. They suggested this proved their clients weren't actually attempting to harm anyone. Ms. Desai's rebuttal was powerful. The lack of successful attempts was due to the vigilance of potential victims and their communities, not any innocence on the part of the defendants. The defense brought forward character witnesses, former employers, neighbors, even a local charity where one defendant had volunteered. These testimonies attempted to paint a picture of upstanding citizens, but the prosecution's cross-examination revealed how carefully the network had maintained these cover stories to avoid suspicion. Aditi watched from the gallery as the defense presented their case. The past months had changed her. She was no longer the frightened girl who had fled from a white van. She had become an advocate, speaking at schools about safety awareness and helping other survivors find their voice. Seeing the defendants try to deny their actions only strengthened her resolve. Officer Singh's investigative work came under particular scrutiny from the defense. They questioned her methods, suggesting she had pushed the investigation in a particular direction based on community pressure. But her meticulous documentation and by-the-book approach stood up to their questioning, her testimony remaining unshaken. The turning point came during the cross-examination of a defense expert on delivery operations. Ms. Desai presented evidence showing how the network's van movements didn't match any legitimate delivery patterns. Their stops were concentrated around schools and areas where young people gathered, with no corresponding delivery records. In the courthouse cafeteria during breaks, survivors and their families gathered to support each other. What had started as a loose connection of victims had become a tight-knit community. They shared updates about their safety awareness programs, discussed ways to help other communities, and provided emotional support during difficult testimony. The defense's attempts to explain away the encrypted communications and financial records proved particularly weak. Their expert witness had to admit under cross-examination that the pattern of money movement and the level of encryption went far beyond what any legitimate delivery service would require. Mrs. Sharma noticed how other parents in the gallery leaned forward whenever the defense presented their arguments, their faces showing the same mix of anger and determination she felt. These criminals had threatened their children, and no amount of legal maneuvering could erase that reality. The community's support remained unwavering. Pine Valley residents continued to attend the proceedings, their presence a silent reminder of the united front that had helped break the case. Local businesses still coordinated support for the families, and the school system maintained its flexible arrangements for students involved in the trial. As the defense case progressed, their arguments began to show clear inconsistencies. They couldn't explain why legitimate delivery workers would need false identification documents, or why their routes focused on observing children rather than making actual deliveries. Each attempted explanation only served to highlight the suspicious nature of their activities. The prosecution's rebuttal was methodical and devastating. Ms. Desai presented surveillance footage showing the same vehicles and individuals appearing in multiple jurisdictions, always following similar patterns. The defense's claim of coincidence became increasingly implausible with each piece of evidence. Agent Kapoor's team had continued investigating throughout the trial, and new evidence regularly strengthened the prosecution's case. More survivors came forward, their stories matching the pattern established in Pine Valley. The defense's attempts to dismiss these accounts as hysteria fell flat in the face of such consistent testimony. The impact of the trial extended far beyond the courthouse. News coverage had sparked a national conversation about community safety and the importance of teaching children to trust their instincts. Pine Valley's response to the incident was being studied as a model for other communities facing similar challenges. As Part 7 draws to a close, the defense's case appears to be crumbling under the weight of evidence and testimony. Their attempts to provide innocent explanations for their clients' actions have only served to highlight the calculated nature of the criminal network. For the Sharma family and other survivors, the approaching end of the trial brings both anxiety and hope. The verdict will do more than determine the fate of the defendants, it will send a message about the power of communities to stand up against those who threaten their safety. The day of the verdict arrived with a solemn weight. The courthouse corridors were packed with families, journalists, and community members who had followed the case from its beginnings in Pine Valley. Aditi sat between her parents in the front row of the gallery, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, feeling the support of dozens of survivors and their families behind her. Agent Kapoor and Officer Singh sat nearby, their faces showing the culmination of months of dedicated work. The prosecution team, led by Ms. Desai, appeared confident but reserved. They had presented an overwhelming case, but everyone knew that jury decisions could be unpredictable. The jury had deliberated for 3 days, carefully reviewing the mountain of evidence presented during the trial. Each hour of waiting had felt like an eternity for the families involved. Now, as the jurors filed back into the courtroom, the tension was palpable. The judge's instructions to maintain order seemed almost unnecessary, everyone was holding their breath. The jury forewoman stood, her voice clear and steady as she delivered the verdicts. Count by count, the defendants were found guilty. Conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, operating a criminal enterprise across state lines, the list went on. Each guilty verdict felt like another brick being lifted from the shoulders of the survivors and their families. Mrs. Sharma let out a quiet sob as the final verdict was read. Mr. Sharma wrapped an arm around his wife and daughter, drawing them close. Around them, other families were having similar moments of relief and emotion. The defendants showed little reaction, but their attorneys immediately began preparing their appeals paperwork. Outside the courthouse, Agent Kapoor addressed the waiting media. "This verdict sends a clear message," she stated firmly. "Communities working together with law enforcement can stop these criminal enterprises. What started in Pine Valley has helped make our children safer across multiple states." The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following month, but the impact of the verdict was immediate. News channels across the country carried the story, highlighting how one community's response to danger had led to the dismantling of a sophisticated criminal network. Pine Valley had become a symbol of hope and resistance. Back at Pine Valley High School, Aditi's Safety Awareness Group held a special meeting. Students from other schools attended via video conference, eager to learn from their experience. The program had grown beyond anyone's expectations, now serving as a model for similar initiatives across the country. Mr. Sharma's convenience store hosted a community celebration that evening. The small shop was packed with neighbors, law enforcement officers, and families who had supported each other throughout the trial. Mrs. Patel brought coffee and pastries from her shop, and other local businesses contributed to the impromptu gathering. Officer Singh took a moment to address the crowd. "What happened here in Pine Valley wasn't just about catching criminals," she said. "It was about showing what's possible when a community refuses to live in fear. Every one of you played a part in this victory." The following weeks brought more developments. The federal investigation, sparked by the Pine Valley case, continued to uncover connected criminal operations in other regions. Agent Kapoor's team used the evidence and methods from this case to help other communities identify and stop similar threats. The sentencing hearing arrived with less tension but equal importance. The judge's statement before delivering the sentences emphasized the calculated nature of the crimes and the broad impact on communities. The defendants received lengthy federal prison terms, ensuring they would never again threaten another child. Aditi's impact statement at the sentencing hearing moved many to tears. She spoke not as a victim, but as a survivor who had helped create positive change. "What you tried to do to me and others failed," she said, addressing the defendants directly. "Instead of breaking us, you made our communities stronger." The case led to new legislation being proposed in several states, aimed at increasing penalties for organized criminal activities targeting minors. Politicians and policymakers studied the Pine Valley response as a model for community-based safety initiatives. The cooperation between local and federal law enforcement became a template for future investigations. Mrs. Sharma noticed a profound change in her daughter as they left the courthouse for the final time. Aditi walked with confidence, her head held high. The trauma of that September morning would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. She had transformed it into a source of strength and inspiration for others. The Safety Awareness Program continued to evolve. With input from law enforcement and cybersecurity experts, they developed new training materials and resources for communities. The app they had created was being enhanced and adopted by schools across the country, helping create networks of alert and prepared students. 1 year after the incident, Pine Valley held a community safety fair. Families from other affected communities attended, sharing their experiences and strategies. Workshop sessions covered everything from personal safety to community organizing. The event became an annual tradition, drawing participants from across the country. Agent Kapoor maintained contact with the Sharma family, keeping them updated on the ongoing impact of their case. The investigation had led to the identification and disruption of similar networks in other regions. The methods and evidence from the Pine Valley case had become a valuable resource for law enforcement nationwide. As Part 8 concludes, Pine Valley stands as a testament to the power of community action. The criminal network that once threatened their children has been dismantled, its members facing justice. But the real victory lies in the changes that emerged from this challenge: stronger communities, better prepared children, and a model for fighting back against those who would harm the vulnerable. The Sharma family's determination to seek justice had sparked a movement that reached far beyond their quiet suburb. Aditi's quick thinking and courage, combined with her community support, had helped create lasting change. As she prepares to graduate high school, she knows her experience will always remind others that when communities stand together, justice is possible.